Welcome to another episode of Nuggets with Sauce, the podcast dishing up bite-sized insights you can sink your teeth into, served with a saucy take on common leadership challenges by your host, Michelle Lawrence. Oh, I am so delighted to be back for yet another episode of Nuggets with Sauce. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Michelle Lawrence, and I am beyond delighted today. I am fired up because I know a great conversation is about to go down in history with my good, trusted network partner, member, community person, human being extraordinaire, Lynn Miller. Lynn, welcome to Nuggets with Sauce.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you're here with me today. So as you know, and as my listeners and watchers know, we always kick off by having me ask you to introduce yourself without using your job title. So Lynn, what is it that fires you up, gets you out of bed every day? What's your magic mojo in the world to make it a better place from your area of business expertise?
That's like the best question, Michelle.
Well, thank you.
Really, what gets me out of bed every morning is the possibility that people who are experts, have all this work that they've done, find a way to discover how they want to be known in the world, which is different.
That is different.
And that, for me, is it's like candy.
Or really thoughtsy nuggets.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that. That is a very rare and unique thing. So thank you for, yes, I love, opportunity, and how are we seen? How are we known? How do we show up? I absolutely love that. Other thing, of course, I always like to ask too is, do you have a recommended read, watch, or listen for our audience?
I have 2 out of 3.
Okay.
So the read is Outliers. Outliers is part of how I started appreciating what I understood, because I spent 10,000 hours on each career.
Wow.
So I kind of spent 10,000 hours on singing, 10,000 hours in retail, 10,000 hours on learning, and wrapped it all up when COVID came and figured out how to use it all.
Awesome sauce. Love that.
So Outliers is my favorite book, and Lessons in Chemistry is by far my favorite television show.
Lessons in Chemistry.
If you have not seen that,
I have not.
Oh my gosh, it's on Apple TV. It is amazing.
Okay, excellent recommendation. So I always just love, because you never know where your mind can go and what can happen and what we can learn through these kinds of things. So thank you very much for sharing your recommendations with us today. So without any further ado, because I know you and I have had some great talks, and we are going to continue to have great talks. And today we're going to share a wonderful little packet of nuggets of our talks. And so let's get down to the nuggets that we need more leaders to be biting into, chewing on, and digesting in their leadership journey. So Lynn, kick us out of the gate here, because you and I were just warming up in the background before we started to record, and I was like, you just saw me kind of, take off a little bit. I think I kind of elevated out of my chair a little more than usual when you brought your first nugget to the table. So go ahead.
Well, so the question is the nuggets. The nugget is that companies don't realize they have hidden treasures of expertise sitting around in their company.
Bam. That is the golden nugget. They don't even know what they've got. Why is that, Lynn?
Why is that? Because they're focused on job roles and tasks and productivity and all those important things that are going to help their business, but they don't know how much potential there is to help their business by using expertise they haven't even tapped into.
Right.
There's these things called zone of genius that may or may not align with the job.
Please tell us what a zone of genius is.
A zone of genius is something that somebody named Lexioni came up with it. It was a term. It's not the term I generally use. I say, what is it that you get the most enjoyment out of sharing within all the expertise you have? So if you could use this one area of expertise and it would impact a huge change in the world, what would it be? And usually it has nothing to do with anything they have talked about. It's an unspoken desire.
Interesting. So here we are muddling around, scrambling like crazy over all the technobabble stuff that, all that bullshit that we're talking about every day. Not that it's not kind of important, but we're so focused in on the tasking and the task mastering that we've completely missed the boat of like, I never actually slowed down enough to think about, hey, what does anybody on my team actually, truly want to do that maybe they're not doing right now? But boy, if I would let them do it. I love the idea of the genius, or however you want to call it. This is, in my world, I often refer to this as, what makes you shine? Where do you shine?
For sure.
Right? Where do you show up and you feel glowy and wonderful and energetic? You're like the human equivalent of a light bulb.
Absolutely.
Right? And not a flickering LED one either. I just want to point that out. I love that though, but we're missing this, right? Like nobody's sitting around. We're so busy just going, what's in front of me that I can see, that I'm not even taking the time to think. And by the way, are we finding that leaders aren't even thinking about that for themselves? Is that possible?
Leaders I wish leaders would think about that for themselves, because again, you don't have a chance. Like if you were leaving a legacy, what would that look like is a great question to ask a leader.
I like that. Yeah.
And these are all kind of deep questions and things you wouldn't normally ask yourself. But the thing about that is that's why somebody needs to listen for it. It's not something an individual can figure out through a self-assessment. It's not something even the leader can write about from now till doomsday to necessarily come up. The writing process is pretty interesting. I haven't just finished writing a book myself.
Congratulations.
So the writing process is interesting. You learn a lot about yourself.
I bet.
But that's not necessarily the legacy.
Right.
And the lessons learned about how you can show up best, or what's the best use of you for others is really, why would anybody not want to do it?
Sounds like work.
It's the opposite of work.
I can just imagine a lot of people saying, well, that sounds like work, Lynn, and I'm already really busy with my grocery list of all the stuff that I'm cracking the whip on everybody to get going over here because somebody's breathing down my neck to get some numbers in for the end of the quarter.
Well, that's the truth. But if you have somebody listening for that, and asking some questions that you just like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I never thought of it this way. And if it's more about when I ask the question, how do you be known? How do you want to be known? You know what? People can't even answer it yet. They think it does feel like work. When I say, what is it that you wish people would do differently that relates to what you always talk about and coach about? What do you wish they would do differently? And so one client of mine said, I wish that people who were ready to get out of corporate and into their own business knew how to get ready for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what she'd been communicating before. She'd been communicating about knowing how to sell.
Yeah. Total disconnect there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen until I asked her that question. What do you want to see people do differently? And because it's always, of course, they can help them get there. But until, I'd say the biggest other thing that happens in corporate, what leaders are missing is an opportunity for their other leaders, some of the people who've been there for a long time and have lots of experience, they neglect to find out what it is really matters to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, when we talk about, factors that either drive businesses forward or impede that, what I like to call the speed and ease of getting things done, everything that you just said is tied right back to engagement, right? And engagement is a key factor. I mean, it touches everything in terms of, this is about anything to do with retention, anything to do with development, anything to do with, output and productivity. And it really is an underpinning of culture, right? All these driving factors. Like, you don't even care enough to know about me. There's no time. Nobody makes time. And I'm always very deliberate about, I say make time, not take time, because taking is passive and making is active. Right? But like, where's the time for anybody to reflect on the idea that, hey, what I'm talking about, but what I really want to be doing or talking about aren't matched. And I think there's at least a half-bitten chunk of a nugget going on in there that's starting to percolate in my brain about burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
Like these dissonances and these disconnects, and the how engaged do you think I'm going to be if I'm working for you and you don't care? You don't seem to. Maybe it's not that you don't, but you're not making the time to show that you care enough to ask me questions or listen to what I'm saying, in the sense of paying attention enough to be like, wow, Michelle keeps referring to certain things, or topics keep coming up, or she keeps expressing interest in stuff. Maybe I should pay attention to this, because maybe there's back to our earlier point, maybe there's an opportunity over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that people think, everybody thinks differently. As a result of thinking differently, the results that you drive also look different. They just have a different complexion to them. They fit the goal, but how they got there, the road they took to get there, is every single leader's secret sauce, and not one of them necessarily shares with another.
Right.
And I mean, I think back to my days at retail, which I worked at what used to be called Marshall Fields and is now Macy's.
By the way, we get no money for saying this. This is
No,
not.
we get no money for saying, definitely.
Simply a matter of fact.
I was selling what I thought what most people would think would be the most boring. I was managing the most boring department in the store. And I was just so frustrated that.
Okay, wait, stop. What is the most boring?
Underwear
department. Underwear is the most boring department in the store. Okay, that was
bras and underwear. Yes.
Wow. Well, okay, that was an unexpected sauce on a nugget right there. Like that. Okay, I'm not sure I want to dig into why that is at this point in the game.
It felt boring. When I got the job.
I learned something today, people.
Fascinating after I started digging into it.
Right. So you're sitting there in retail.
I'm sitting there looking at numbers.
Department, at least boring to you.
Boring to me. Mm-hmm. And saying, why isn't this stuff selling? The people are doing a great job of trying to sell it. Why is it not selling? And I said, I wonder, so all the guys who sell that stuff come into your department every month or so and take inventory and order new stuff so that you can get more of the same boring stuff. Okay. And one day I noticed that I had it organized by size, and the smallest sizes on the top never moved, and the largest sizes on the bottom were empty. And I said, why is it that this is happening? How do you order this? And they said, oh, well, we do 4 of the little ones, 4 of the medium, and 2 of the big. And I said, can you reverse that?
Huh. Yeah.
My business doubled.
Right.
My business doubled, because guess where I was? Downtown Chicago, which is not small people. Those are not small people.
No. But again, to your point, not maybe so much entirely listening, but paying attention to those details, right? And meanwhile, the most boring department in the store probably had the most boring sales guys, evidently showing up, who were bored enough not to pay attention to what was going on. Like knowing your audience, knowing who you're working with. I
Definitely.
love that story. Because I'm weirdly fascinated by the fact that you thought that was boring, but Victoria's Secret will argue otherwise. And no,
Oh, that's true. I got to Victoria's Secret later in my career.
there you go. And then things got saucy. But
Then it got interesting. Yeah.
then it got interesting. But that makes so much sense. And it's these funny things that on spec can make us scratch our head and go like, because we can think about this in terms of when we're trying to lead people, like, yeah, I keep giving you stuff, but why aren't you all that into it? Like, yes, I can kick it out the door, but I don't love it, or I'm not paying enough attention to it. And if you, slow down that little bit and make that effort to sit back or ask the right questions, why? And, maybe it's a case, do you think maybe it's a case of starting to ask yourself and your staff, things like, I'm going to kind of rip off your analogy. What is the right fit?
Right. Right.
One size doesn't fit all. And obviously in different environments, sorry, I got to riff with this weirdness. I got to run with this now. But everybody doesn't want the same thing. It doesn't all fit the same. It doesn't even necessarily show up where you expect it to be. Somebody's making assumptions instead of doing what you were doing, where you finally sat back and noticed something and then started asking the right questions.
Well, take that and fast forward about 30 years, 35 years, and it's basically the same story, but a different day. Right. And it's experts who say, this is what people need to know because I know it. And they forgot. Here's the thing that experts forget: the journey to getting to where you are now.
Right.
And so you're at point 10 saying, okay, I want to share my knowledge and help people develop using today's knowledge. And what happened? What did you forget to do? How did you get there in the first place? Why aren't you starting from 1, not 10?
But everybody wants to be a 10. Nobody wants to be. I mean, that's such an interesting dynamic, I think, for us culturally. And I think I mean that not simply in terms of company culture or team culture, but also I think just, culture in, we're in America, so we're going to say American culture. Like being amateur, oh my God, you don't know what you're doing. Don't be amateur. Don't be anything like you're supposed to go from 0 to 500 in 3 seconds flat, or you're a flop, you're a failure, you're a loser, you're an idiot. And yet nobody really thinks about, wait a minute, it actually does take time and effort and, dare I say, mistakes and blunders and all kinds of things along the way. Yes. It's very rare that somebody can go from 0 to 500 instantaneously. I would
add to that. I would add to that and say, you can't even get to 500 unless you know 1 to 20 solid. Like you have to have it solid. And if you don't know that and can master that, you're never going to see 500.
Right. And you got to put the effort in, and you got to be deliberate and step back and think about, and by the way, what is 500 supposed to be? What's the mark you're even aiming for?
Right. For sure.
And your 500 might not be my 500, or, your idea of what's the most exciting department in this or boring department in the store isn't the same as I don't know. Not that I'm trying to be a weirdo about underwear. I swear to God, I'm not. But I would have thought I would have thought appliances might have been more boring. I don't know.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yes, it is more boring in my opinion.
But I think that's part of what you're sharing, Lynn, and I think is really important is, as leaders, are we making the effort to find that out? Do we even know within ourselves or our own teams who thinks what's exciting and who thinks what's dull? And are we well aligned within that? Like, what if somebody on the team is more excited by something than another person, and yet they're misaligned? What they're doing And this goes back to what we were saying earlier. People are saying things, I'm all about this, but in reality, their desire is something different. We're not connecting the dots as leaders, and we're not creating those opportunities to find out if there is even a match or a mismatch, right?
Right. Totally. I think that there is, within a discipline, within a team, there are people, certain people who just gravitate towards certain parts of the work
Sure.
and could do it all day long and
Yep.
have a great time doing it. So why are you making everybody do it?
Right. That's called equality. We're being equal around here. Which, and as you know, to no end, that drives me crazy. Like, let's please stop confusing equity and equality, or fairness and equality, because if everything were equal, we wouldn't have any accessibility. You'd all have to take the dang stairs.
Yeah, I
If we're
believe
being fair, we're going to give people more of what they need. Somebody needs the stairs, somebody else needs a ramp. In
exactly.
fairness, let's let them have a ramp or
Exactly.
take the stairs. We're not even doing that, are we, Lynn?
No, we're not. We're not giving them. I mean, I got out of corporate a long time ago for that very reason, because what was valued didn't match at all with what I was really good at. It just, I could sell probably better than most, but that selling became a chore because of what they insisted I do as the part of the process.
Right.
And then to take it a step further, I would get more creative because I went into the world of learning, and then e-learning, and then custom learning and platforms. And so my imagination took me to places of possibility that I never would have imagined. And you know who took me there? The client.
A client?
The customer said, this is what I wish we could have. And I said, okay, let's see if we can get it for you.
Right. Right.
And that didn't fit the mold.
Right. And that's, I think there's like, I feel like there's a tsunami of nuggets coming through in this conversation. I love this. But you're touching on so many really important and relevant things here in the sense of, like, again, we have these mismatches, these misalignments. We're not asking questions. We're not even figuring out, like, hey, are you doing what you naturally are wired to do? You're right. We tend to gravitate towards certain things. There's reasons why, there's very good reasons why I didn't go into medicine. I find innards are pretty irpy for start. I mean, I'm sorry, beauty, skin deep. God bless anybody who can dig in deeper. We need you. I ain't that gal. I know that, we know these things. So are we even, in my world, is the head, the heart, and the briefcase. And if they're not all aligned, who we innately are as people and what we're wired to do can be a giant disconnect against that briefcase, which is like your resume and your skills. How many of us have been, and you were talking about this, been like you, I've been there too, in a job, in a role that was like not really who I was, but I had to do, for whatever reason, we did it anyway. But we didn't shine. There was no genius. There was no joy. There was nothing going on there. But, we were making do, probably hoping to get the hell out. So there's those issues that we're not unpacking and addressing, right?
Right.
I mean, that's so critical to it. And then the other piece that I think is really important to kind of chew on a little bit more here is, it was a client who was saying something, what we might be making assumptions, and we like to put we love to have parameters and lines and markers. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You got to draw the line somewhere in business. True. Especially for safety, especially for, there's all kinds of things that, depending on what kind of work you're doing. I mean, you do have to have guardrails. But when those become prison bars and I can't get out, then, right? If that's how somebody's feeling on a team, like, now I'm trapped within this and nobody's going to give me the opportunity to try it new or differently. And especially when the customer is saying, I wish this was different. I'm not seeing what I want to see.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to people who are thought leaders, they're sick of what they're doing. They've been doing the same thing for 20 years. and they're bored. And I said, well, what would make it not boring anymore?
Ooh, stop. Repeat. Say that again.
Talk to experts with 20 years of experience who are bored with what they're doing.
And then ask them.
And then say, well, what would make it not boring anymore?
What would make it not boring anymore?
Yeah. And they have an answer to that. But they never considered it.
Amazing.
So I usually, the way I get at it, the way I get the kind of to the place where I get the unspoken desire is I take one little, just like I did when I was in that little department store, not so little department store, and looked at one little thing and said, what if you had more of this? What if you got to use more of this?
Right.
Then what would happen? And they light up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we decide on a strategy for 10xing their business, like it says in my window,
yep,
it's the one little thing that they had not even spoken about that would be like a dream if they could create that in the world.
Isn't it amazing that if you just ask the right question, it opens the door?
Yep.
And you've shared this a couple times here, and I think is so worth repeating, but the idea that like, it's not that they're not thinking about it, or maybe they're kind of not, maybe not in the most conscious way imaginable.
Right.
But how quickly I would imagine people, once you open that door to that possibility and say, wait a minute, I can talk about this? You mean you actually want to hear what I have to say?
Yes.
You mean you value my ideas or my contributions? I mean, imagine taking this, you're talking about this in the space of asking, board experts what they could do. Mind you, how many board experts do we potentially have in our businesses that we don't think of them that way, but there they are. And opening that door with the question, if I could help you have or do something differently here that would help you get more excited, more engaged, and more lit up about what you're doing, what would that be? What an amazing conversation that could be.
Just imagine the employee engagement score after that.
Yeah. I always say from a coaching standpoint, there's 3 questions I always like folks to ask, and you can do it on the fly. You can self-medicate if you want with this, if you want to call it that. What's working? What are you liking about what's going on here? Where are you stuck? What's not working for you? And then question 3, my favorite, what would you do differently if you could?
That's right.
Get them engaged.
And usually something's happened in the history of their work where they say, name me a time, think back to a time when you got to take what you know how to do and somebody had a problem that was a little different and you got to create something brand new as a result. Just about that one little time, that one little experience. And usually they talk for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. And they brighten up.
Yeah.
And the energy comes back. The light bulb starts glowing, right? Your human light bulb starts glowing and they get excited. That's engagement. I mean, again, if you're leading people and you're watching or listening right now, this is only a couple of key questions. It's a pretty simple thing to do and get a boatload of intel and data that you could actually do something with.
For sure. How could you, if you wanted to be known in this company, whether you stay another year or another 5 years, if you wanted to be known for something in this company, what would it be that you were known for?
Right.
It may have nothing to do with the job.
Right. And that's okay.
It might be something that would help another department. It might be something about that a customer told you that stuck with you, that you felt frustrated that you couldn't figure out how to solve.
Right.
Could be all kinds of things.
Tons.
So I look for those nuggets, if you will, in somebody's experience that they can, that on the whole looks kind of boring,
Mhm.
and take them to a spot where they got inspired.
Right. Love that. Take them to a spot where they got inspired. And if they got inspired once, wouldn't it be great to get them inspired like that again on your behalf, for your team, your department, your business, whatever it is? Because
Yep.
inspired people or engaged people who are really, they are. Maybe they're not 0 to 500, but they might get 0 to 100 or 200. And that's way better than sitting around going, 0, this sucks. Nobody cares. Nobody's interested. I'm just grinding away over here.
Well, and then you're the leader who is like completely completely oblivious to gold in your department that you didn't know you had.
Sitting on right on top of it. Isn't it funny
Right in front of you.
how we can have these blind spots where it can be such a miss, like you can have somebody right in the room with you. And how often are we like, I got to go find somebody outside to do, I got to hire an expert, outside person. I got to hire a new person from outside to bring this experience or this knowledge to the mix. Wait a minute. You probably already you could have somebody in the room, or maybe even at least somebody in the building. You should be looking there before you get out on the street.
For sure. For
Because
sure.
that person's already there. They're already invested with you to some degree because they're pulling a paycheck with you and they're showing up.
You underestimate how much people want to contribute to the company. And they feel limited by their job.
Right.
They really want to contribute to the company.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to know. It's hard to know what they could possibly do if you gave them the chance.
Right. Just gave them the chance. And I think, this is going to have to be a whole other conversation for a whole other time, but I think right there, you just blew out of the water, and I appreciate this. The whole, I so push back on this notion, and you've been hearing it, I've been hearing it, I'm sure our audience has been hearing it, this whole bullshit notion about people don't want to work anymore. Oh, give me a break. Yeah, people do want to work. They just don't want to work for the kind of crap that too many people are putting out the door because they're not creating the environments or leading the way that you and I have just been talking about here today, where it's like you don't care to find out how golden and wonderful your people are. You don't give them the opportunity to share and express.
Correct.
You're right. They're not going to want to work for you if you're going to act like, if you're sitting on gold and you're treating it like, I don't know, what's something nasty these days? You're treating it like toxic waste.
Yeah, dirt.
Like,
yeah,
you will get those results if that's how you handle it. So I love what you're saying in that right back to the, like, what's your potential gold mine? And you don't even have to dig. You just have to dust.
Don't even have to dig. And you know what? And it doesn't mean they're not going to continue to enjoy that same job. Maybe there's something it's going to give them this great feeling where they felt they were valued and their talent was valued. And however it gets utilized, but it does impact the job you're doing right now today, because all of a sudden your value goes up.
You're seen, you're heard, you're recognized, you are appreciated. All these things that actually, frankly, cost nothing. That's the other thing that I think is a real win here, Lynn. Everything that you've shared today costs $0.
Truth.
So not only are our leaders sitting on a pile of gold, they don't even have to spend any of it to get it all shiny and wonderful and working for them.
They need to just give them time to use it.
Yeah. Just make the time to ask those questions that you've shared today, to find out where that gold really is, dust it off a little bit, give them the opportunity to do something with it. Sit back and enjoy.
100%. 100%.
Love that. This has been such an amazing conversation. We are going to have more because I know you and I
This
have
was so
many different
fun.
things to unpack. But thank you so much for being guest today on this episode.
Welcome.
Loved having you here, Lynn. Thank you so much. And for everybody out there watching and listening, I hope that you will tune in to our next episode. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for joining this episode of Nuggets with Sauce. I hope we fed your appetite for insights and information on how to improve your business. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never go hungry for more thought leadership.